Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link, together with a thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
All right, let's get it on today.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Discord, good morning.
It's not it's not become an infrequent thing now. Every live show, do the warm-up, get everyone ready, chitty-chatting along, live show starts, no response from Discord. Right, Neil
I'm
and
trying to figure out if they're there.
Let's just check out if they can actually answer some housekeeping questions. Actually, let's spin this around a little bit. Arwin's not here. He'd normally play Ballwin. You ask the housekeeping questions. I'll play Baller. Go ahead.
All right. Any signs of physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curve?
Not formally known as. The horizon is Earth curve. You can see it and calculate it. Come on, Discord. You can join in. You can disagree.
I think everybody's afraid of Baller, Nathan.
Did you measure it or calculate it?
Pardon?
Did you measure it or did you calculate it?
I measured it.
How'd you measure it?
I looked at it.
Well, I'm looking at it too.
I could compare it to things in the distance it was obscuring with its physicality.
Oh, so it's got physicality.
Yeah, it blocks boats and buildings into the distance with a calculable value. That would be the physical edge limitation called Earth curve. Blocks boats and buildings. Obviously.
Oh, okay. Obviously. And where does it start that? Let's say you're at a 1 foot observer height. Where would that be? Where would that?
It's 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. 1.2 times 1. 1.2 miles.
All right. So if you're 1 foot high, the Earth curve must start at 1.2 miles. It could be no further than that, right?
Yeah. That's where it will be. Blocking boats and buildings, as it does, because it's a hill getting in the way, called Earth curve.
Obviously. All right. So if we can prove that it's further than that, then you don't have Earth curve at 39.59 and 1 foot high, do you?
Impossible. Earth curve's a physical limitation to your view. It's going to block your view. That's what limits your view. It's the only thing that limits your view.
Well, obviously, you've been limited on your research because you haven't heard about the black swan.
No, I haven't. What's that?
Neil?
I'm in the middle of fixing my kitchen. You're going to have to take it.
You're fixing your kitchen.
Hold on. Go ahead, Mr. Palmer.
Yeah.
Mr. Palmer?
Oh, someone in Discord?
Yeah. There's a couple of them hovering off mute that aren't talking to us, but that were in the pre-show. Shy with the live show, maybe. Go ahead. What's the black swan? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mr. Palmer?
No, he's got on mute now.
Were they chat skanking before all this?
I don't know.
The black swan is an image taken where the horizon is miles past where it's supposed to be geometry. What's the word I'm looking for? Geometrically wise.
Beyond its geometric limitation, you mean?
Yes, that too.
Okay, well, let's just say for a second that my claim earlier that it is physical and geometric and measurable and blocking boats and buildings, let's just forget all of that and now claim that it's refracted in a non-geometric position. Why not? So I relinquish all of my previous claim. The horizon that we see is a byproduct of the geometric horizon. What say you?
Well, if it's refracted, how'd you ever measure it?
Measure what?
The distance.
The radius.
It's in the maths. I've already got it. I beg the question of it.
Yes, I know. You calculated it because it only exists in the maths. You never measured it.
Right, but it still exists in reality. It's refracted from the geometric to the non-geometric one we see. Relinquishing all previous claims of physicality that I made earlier with it blocking boats and buildings because it was a hill in the way. I'm just going to relinquish all of that because now it's going to be refracted. Are we clear?
Yeah, but you're still going to have to prove it, right? If you're going to presuppose it.
Yeah, that's perfectly acceptable.
Nice if you in the end can actually deliver the evidence. But you still got to do that.
We see horizons all the time. That's the evidence. It's refracted. None of you are debunking my claim that it's refracted. Light refracts. What's wrong with you?
The horizon cannot be displaced in relation to the horizon through refraction or miraging.
Yeah, it can. Light bend stuff. That's refraction. Refraction's real. The horizon can be refracted. Again, meaning that I will relinquish all previous claims that it's a physical limitation to our view blocking boats and buildings. I'm going to relinquish all claims of geometry and earth curve physicality to now tell you that it's non-physical, refracted, because light does bend.
But I'm sorry, optics studies have actually revealed that the horizon cannot be displaced in relation to the horizon, only objects.
What do you reckon, ladies and gentlemen? I don't think my panel are doing too well. I'm still going.
Refraction.
No,
7/6R, or what kind of refraction are you talking about?
Is it? There it is. Sorry, what was that? Can you repeat that? 10th?
Are you assuming 7/6R refraction, or what other refraction could there be besides the one you're assuming?
I am going to be assuming atmospheric refraction. That's correct. Nothing wrong with that.
Based on what? 7/6R?
Or any derivative of R. It might not necessarily be 7/6 of a radius I can no longer measure because I haven't got a physical horizon. But basically, yes, it's based on R. That's my quote-unquote refraction that Arwin never got to.
I did.
No, you didn't. You chose to argue about what refraction could do.
Yeah.
Where'd you get R?
Right.
In my refraction? Well, I got it from a physical geometric
Actual
limitation
refraction.
called earth curve, the horizon.
But you just relinquished that, though.
Which we debunked.
Look, I can have my cake and eat it. I can have both a physical geometric limitation to our view, blocking boats and buildings and measurable in that effect, and I can have it be where it's non-physical, refracted into a non-geometric position with the very geometry I've relinquished, okay? That's acceptable.
Did you learn that from Phil B?
Look, I will just continue to hold on to the fact that my refraction's been debunked because I can no longer measure the R it's based on, and assert that refraction is real.
Yeah, but then you can't prove it.
No, I haven't got the R value or measurable or capability of measuring it at this point because I've relinquished all physicality to get geometry from with tangent points. But nevertheless, don't you know that refraction's real 7/6R, which is based on R, is physical sphere-shaped air refraction that we do experience. It's not just in my model, obviously.
No, you can't prove it because you're assuming the R within what you're presupposing, but you never get to proving it, and you've already relinquished that you can't.
No,
so
missed,
it's just a delusional statement.
Owen's not as sharp as he might seem. Okay, no, I pointed out we've got atmosphere, so that's how light behaves in atmosphere. There's laws that govern it. The R's
No, it
assumed in
doesn't.
atmosphere.
Right, is that colloquial use of the word the air around us, or are you literally meaning a geometric shape of air?
What with atmo? Atmo, what now? Sphere? Yeah, I'm definitely assuming geometry and sphere shapes when I say atmosphere. It's just the last thing that hasn't been addressed in my current globe position.
Okay, well, air doesn't actually take this shape of spheres unless it is in a specifically spherical shaped container, which the heliocentric model does not have. So Where's this atmosphere?
Gas go down, go boom boom. It forms homogeneous layers to press down on the gas below.
Really? What about a helium balloon?
It also goes down, go boom boom. You just don't understand gas.
Like in puddles?
Yes,
Or-
puddles of gas, that's correct. Gas go down, go boom boom, go splash splash.
Can you show me some of that?
No. However,
Well, this is a good.
I could show you if I bring in a container of gas that's very very dense, let's say, compacted together under high pressure in a container. If I pump some of that into a different container temporarily, it will stay at the bottom and take a very long time to diffuse. Ergo, gas go down, go boom boom. There you go, done.
But if it only stays temporarily, then how is it going to actually permanently stay here on presupposed sphere Earth?
Second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to globe Earth. So when you say on sphere Earth, obviously I mean reality, even though I'm talking about a globe Earth model called the heliocentric model that doesn't really exist. You'll never see it. But in that model, the second law of thermodynamics, a natural law, a law of nature that applies to gas, doesn't apply to sphere Earth. There you go. Shout out to Rebecca, who says Nathan playing the role of a baller is too funny. Oh, well, thank you very much, Rebecca. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's a good time to ask Nathan the baller, any evidence of the Earth radius, the R value?
No, I relinquished it earlier when I said you couldn't get to a physical geometric sphere edge horizon. I claim block boats and buildings by way of it being refracted, so I'm not going to be able to take a tangent point to it to get a value for it. Also, if I'm going to measure it by way of elevation angles to Polaris as I move away and see a 1 degree elevation change towards the horizon at 60 nautical miles, then I'll need a flat plane to measure that. So any derivation to get to R is going to need a flat plane. So that's not too...
So where's this flat plane on a globe Earth?
There isn't.
So sad.
But if I assume a flat plane teeter-tottering on top of a globe, I can call it a tangent plane. Boom, done.
So since
Where is it then in reality?
But just imagine looking out towards the horizon with a straight line, that the one that's no longer refracted, even though I said it was earlier, it's now going to be a straight line like the one that went to the horizon that blocked boats and buildings. That's going to be straight again. So just forget that I relinquished that the horizon isn't blocking boats and buildings because it's refracted now and non-physical. And now just forget all I said about that and go back to the original claim that it is physical with a straight line to it, tangent point to it. Cool?
so since you jettisoned R, any
No, I didn't.
evidence that
No.
distance-
Don't misrepresent what I said. I was very clear and specific. I didn't jettison R. I said, now imagine a straight line to the horizon. That straight line is going to be what we use to measure angles off a tangent plane that isn't the ground. Definitely not the sphere ground, which still exists, but isn't going to be used in this instance. Straight lines, tangent points, tangent planes. It's all going to be good. It's all going to be sphere-shaped.
Okay, that's fine. Then let's move on to this next one. Any evidence that you can have a curved baseline while acquiring an elevation angle?
No, but I can get an elevation angle from a straight line that meets the sphere surface. So that straight line I can call a baseline after I do dip correction to the straight horizontal line that I establish either with the horizon or with the level. And the correction that isn't being done to the geometric horizon now because I switched it around with the horizon we're looking at, that correction means there's a correction from a geometric horizon, the one with a straight line. Because now we won't see it again. We all clear?
You're not allowing us to respond. You're just debunking yourself as you go.
I'm not. I'm just giving the disclaimers.
No, but if you're gonna use something else as a baseline, then you're using something else, not the baseline anymore. So you're just not doing it then, I guess.
I'm just not doing it on the sphere Earth surface.
Oh, for sure.
He's
That's all right.
flip-flop more than a sandal store.
But hold on, me not doing this measurement of an angle off the sphere Earth surface doesn't mean there isn't a sphere Earth surface. It just means that I can't measure an angle from it and I've got a tangent to it because I've got a straight line to it to the point that blocks boats and buildings that I relinquished because it was non-geometric refracted. And then I've reintroduced it so I can do this to correct from the horizon I previously said we could see with a straight line to it, to the one that we do see, and that correction is from the globe Earth. So obviously, based on all of that, there is a globe Earth.
Mesmerizing.
What the hell, dude?
Mesmerizing.
This is getting out of hand.
You just can't debunk it.
It's great. I love it. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of cosmology, astronomy, or astrophysics?
Absolutely. There's the Cavendish experiment.
You call that an experiment?
Yeah, it must have a hypothesis.
Well, what is it?
I've had enough
Oh, the
with this
hypothesis. I'm
ball.
glad you asked. If mass, yeah, because obviously mass, the balls in the shed, they're the mass, right? Well, if mass, then mass attracts mass.
Huh, is that naturally occurring
When-
in nature?
what's
Balls in the
mass?
shed?
It's the thing you
Exactly,
vary.
Ted.
That's a reasonable question. The thing you vary in the experiment, obviously, independent variable mass. That's what we'll be varying when fulfilling the hypothesis. If mass, then mass attracts mass.
Where do
How
we
are you
see?
varying it?
I vary the mass. That's very easy. I can just vary the amount of it.
Yeah. Well, where do you see balls in the shed in nature naturally occurring?
Well, there wouldn't be any if men haven't made them, and men are natural.
Wait a second. He said science. Let him define science.
I did. I
Don't
even
tell
gave
the
you the
scientific method
hypothesis.
first, baller.
I don't need to. I obviously know what it is. I even gave you the hypothesis for Cavendish. What more do you want?
So what's the DV?
The dependent variable, the fact that mass attracts mass that we observe in nature. That I told you. If mass,
Yeah, but how do we observe it in nature? Show me that in nature.
well, obviously mass attracts mass.
No, you're assuming it, but you're not showing me in nature. You have two man-made objects in the shed that are man-made. That's not naturally occurring in nature. So
Men
can
are
I-
natural. Men are natural.
Men are natural.
I am natural.
None.
Absolutely.
Not these days. These days, Supreme Court justices don't even know what a man is.
Supreme Court
All right.
justices are also natural.
All right. Any evidence to the distance of the sun?
Hold on, you're going to let me get away with that? I'm actually proving a ball to people at the moment, unless you undo this. You've caused this mess.
Oh, I've caused this mess.
No,
I'm
I have, but
natural.
I like to project. I'm a baller.
I'm natural. Don't attack me.
So come on, are you going to undo this or what?
Undo what? You're the one sounding silly to all these good housekeeping questions.
These are the answers that we've had. What? I can't do any better than I've done. I've represented
that's-
what they tell us.
I know. I'm not letting the audience enjoy it and have a taste. Last a little longer. Why go for another argument? But they just remember how many times you've switched and flip-flopped. That's
Okay.
the baller for you, right?
As far as I'm concerned, we've got a tangent plane and we've got angles from it and to it, and that makes the globe Earth that we're not using for the ground definitely spherical, because I can correct from it when I look at the non-horizon that isn't geometric, because I both relinquish it, refract it, and draw a line to it when it blocks boats and buildings. I mean, I've got every base covered here, basically.
Yeah, you sound like Phil B.
Yeah.
I've got every base
It just
covered.
makes-
Well, you just can't refute what I say. That's all there is to it.
It's too comical, that's why. All right, let's go on with your little sphere game. Any evidence of self-perpetuating molten iron core at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth? You
Absolutely.
need a tangent plane for that one? Do you need
No,
a
it's,
tangent
it's in
plane?
every textbook. We all understand and know that the magnetic fields that we have are as a direct consequence of that molten iron core, and I even know how it got there. Do you want to know how it got there?
Sure, tell us the little...
A long
nursery
time
rhyme.
ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was this fledgling planet known as Theia, and the fledgling planet was on a collision course with a fledgling Earth. But for the fact that this fledgling planet collides with the fledgling Earth at a glancing blow, not destroying it, but in fact depositing its juicy, gooey, tasty molten iron core into the centre of the presupposed spherical Earth in this story. And the debris, which obliterated everywhere, coalesced through gravitational accretion into what we now call the moon. And that is the story of how we had a oversized, still warm, molten iron core at the centre of the presupposed spherical Earth. Thea smashed into it, didn't destroy it, but the two cores combined, hence the timeline within the heliocentric system that wouldn't work otherwise because we'd have all died because it would be too cold and we wouldn't have any magnetic fields. Still works because Thea smashed into us and created the moon. There you go.
Any evidence of that?
The moon. Can you not
The
see
light
the
in the
moon?
sky?
Hello, there's a moon.
I like the story hour of the Globe Lies. You do it well.
So the light in the sky validates your story.
Absolutely.
No, the proof is petrified wood found on the moon.
That's
I
why.
can't even take this serious.
Perfect. See, Arwen understands. Yeah, when they give us this nonsense about finding petrified wood and saying that the moonstones have come from Earth because they seem like something on Earth, no. Obviously, when Thea smashed into Earth at a glancing blow, there was some wood that went into that debris and obviously became petrified on the moon for Neil deGrasse Tyson to, not Neil deGrasse Tyson, Neil Armstrong to pick up while he was urinating on the moon, as he did. Obviously.
Wow, I love these stories. They just have a life on their own.
I'm sorry, guys. I just have to surrender to him. He's too powerful.
Not really. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Yes. That's how gas behaves. Gas go down, go boom, boom, to form homogeneous layers. What are you laughing at? This is what...
Yeah, second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the sphere.
What about my helium balloon, Nathan?
So second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the Earth, Neil. Now, if you don't mind, we're trying to educate you here. So all gas goes down.
Let's pick up on gas, go down, boom, boom. Go on,
That's
explain
right.
that.
Yes, gas go down, go boom, boom. So when you describe a helium balloon, because Neil's ignorant, what's actually happening is the gases that surround that helium balloon are pressing down, going down, like rain.
So gas goes down.
Yes. 9.8 meters per second. It's gravity, Neil. Have you never heard of it?
Couldn't eat off of that.
But you had never seen hexafluoride or sulfur hexafluoride?
Exactly, Arwen. You never seen
goes
sulfur
down.
hexafluoride? You bring it in a container, you deposit it into another container, and if you only look at it for a short period of time, it looks like it's staying there, defying... Oh, let's not mention entropy. That doesn't apply.
How do we get gas pressure, though, Nathan the Baller?
How do we get gas pressure? By the gas
the
going down, go
gravity.
boom, boom. It's pressing on us when it goes down, go boom, boom. 9.8 meters
Right.
per second.
Gas pressure comes from the gravity all pushing it down and then compressing it like that.
See, Arwen knows
so-
what he's talking about.
So is there a viable demonstration of this you can show us?
He just told you sulfur hexafluoride. This man-made gas comes in a container, gets deposited in a different container, and for a short period of time, it stays in the
Does
container.
it stay there?
So it comes
Temporarily,
in a container.
yes. Temporarily, yes.
It comes in a container. It gets deposited in another container. How did
That's
it
right.
even get anywhere in the beginning?
I should have qualified that. In order to show gas pressure without a container, I need two containers.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right. Or you just need to get out of the atmosphere and then show it that, yeah, there is a vacuum out there. It's
That's
just
right, I'm
down here, gravity is all compacting.
Sphere
it.
shape
So
there?
you gotta look down here, the gravity is all compacting the air. So you gotta make separate containers to actually create a vacuum. But
What
up there,
gravity?
it's all directly open and there's just a vacuum endlessly.
What's
Define gravity.
gravity?
What?
We're talking about gravity. Gas go down, go boom, boom. Try and keep up.
Define gravity.
Gas go down, go boom, boom. 9.8 meters per second.
And my
That's it.
helium balloon goes up.
Because the gas around it goes down, go boom, boom. 9.8 meters per second squared.
Gas does not behave that way. You ignorant baller.
Yes, it does. Sulfur
it does.
hexafluoride. Pay
That's right.
attention.
Did you forget about the demonstration?
Sulfur hexafluoride will eventually make its way up.
Eventually. No, second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the Earth. When you scale it up, it doesn't apply that way. So the fact that it will behave that way in terms of the demonstration I gave doesn't necessarily mean the demonstration I gave in this example will in any way correlate with a sphere Earth. That model doesn't have the second law of thermodynamics applied to it. Ergo, the gas will not fill space.
Model,
and
you say?
hold
Can I see
on.
this model?
Neil, the sulfur hexafluoride might disperse from the aquarium, but you know it's just going to form columns at the floor bottom, right? That's what gas does.
Yes, it's just going to come out and then spill over and go down, go boom, boom again. That's what it does. And that's what all gases do. And even if it doesn't and it fills the space, that doesn't apply to the Earth because second law doesn't apply. So even if you're going to describe the dispersion of the gas throughout the classroom in that example, that second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to sphere Earth.
Well, your gravity is Newtonian, and that's not applied anymore. It's Einsteinian now.
Look, when I want to explain that gas goes down, go boom, boom, then the second law is ignored and gas has gravity pulling it down, go boom, boom. Right? When you show gas not doing that, then that is the second law, but we're not talking about Earth. When we are talking about Earth, we're not talking about the ground, we're talking about a model, and that model doesn't have the law applied to it. I hope we're all clear now.
Yeah, besides, helium balloons might go up, but that's only because of buoyancy, because the gravity basically pushes the heavier gases down in relation to the lighter gas, which will like float on top of it.
That's correct.
10th man, kick them both out.
That's correct. He's right. You just scared him.
No, all are welcome, including these two guys who are just talking endlessly.
You just scared of our globe Earth argument. Arwin and I are as one.
Just haven't proven anything. You
I love
circle
it.
jerking us.
The
Let's go
audience
down,
knows the arguments, Neil. Don't worry.
We will break you, Neil.
We will make
Do
you a
it now.
baller. How many fingers? Say 4 one more time.
Well, that was fun. That ends the housekeeping questions.
You didn't ask about scientific
Thank
evidence.
God.
What's that? I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
Hypothesis.
Well, that was fun. Halfway through the
That
show
was
already.
fun.
Not quite 100
So
people
you got
watching,
the-
but
You weren't
nearly.
serious? What?
No. So let's review what happened. Nathan knows both arguments real well, and you can see I just rampaged along, skipping and jumping, and when he lost on one, he just jumped to the other, and which then he had to negate the first one, and then he came back to the first one after the second one got negated. So that was pretty fun.
I'm sorry, but he refuted every claim. So
He tried.
I won in all scores because Arwin's on my side. Therefore, it doesn't matter how much wrong I stated. It's all right as far as Arwin's concerned as a baller. That's how it works. If I talk total nonsense now about the gas lamp in Narnia actually being real, Arwin will and must agree with how right I am, because at the end of my example with the gas lamp in Narnia, I'm going to talk about how Earth's a sphere and the sky's a vacuum. Therefore,
Well-
correct? Right, Arwin?
well, Nathan, you are much more an expert on how things work in Narnia. So yeah, I'm gonna have to trust you on that.
Absolutely. And, how did it know to be food?
Well, in chat, they're saying Nathan has to play baller to spice up the show. And I said, well, because you cowards won't come in. You're just going to stay in chat. Come on in. All are welcome.
Shatner's Bassoon has given us his, I think what it says, when it says member for 15 months, someone filled me in, because I thought, oh, does that mean they've renewed their membership for a whole 15 months? No, it means they've been a member for 15 months, and they get one super chat a month for being a member. So I think that's why it logs the super chat in that way. But thank you very much indeed for the super chat, Shatner's Bassoon. It says, FED, home of the best helioskeptics. Share the show. Indeed you do. Thank you very much indeed.
It'd be fun to have a real baller who doesn't know who you are listen to you and then say, wait a minute, that's the position I held. You just gave it up for this other thing. And then he'd be like, what are you doing?
Well, you get
They
quick
just
fire rebuttals
genuinely
from you
believe
guys.
we would be ballers, because when we do that, we are, right? And we're really good at it. We're much better ballers, especially together, dude. We'd be like the champion of heliocentrism.
Not hard though, is it? Let's be honest. Their position's much easier to argue.
No, it is hard, Nathan. It's just that we've become so good
Yeah,
at dealing with it that it's not hard to us to emulate it. It is hard, though.
I don't think
Yeah,
so.
but you could
Think
circle
of
jerk
believe
all
it's
you want.
real, because
Think
your
about-
belief in it being real is going to actually fuzzy it up for you. See?
If you
No,
separate
they-
it out
they-
into the pro debaters versus the normies that come here, occasionally we'll see some random face that typically becomes this person does not exist on the thumbnail, but they'll never be seen again. But they'll come with a fairly reasonable idea about what they're going to debate and reasonable understanding of heliocentrism in general. and within a few minutes they've had their ass handed to them, and be circle jerking or fundy chanting or calling me an idiot. You know, that doesn't take very long with your normie. But with the upper echelons of the people who've been around chat skanking and debating this subject for a long time, they can do what I did, jump around between the different things. But that doesn't take a great deal of effort to train people in. I mean, over the 7 or 8 years or however long it's been, I've watched our opponents who started similar to me at a similar time to me as anti-flat earthers come up through the ranks in terms of how they can talk nonsense because they've been trained how to do it. But they've got a much better foundation for understanding how the argument should progress. Now, while they might seem like complicated arguments when you're talking about tangent planes, because they are of the fundamental foundation that Earth is a sphere, they can stick themselves in that mindset to have that understanding, like most people in the Western world, with any basic argument from the sphere. So they can typically debate it, especially if they're of the mindset, with a normie, that we're complete idiots. Now, it might not necessarily be the case that the people who are on the pro-flat Earth side that are out doing it all the time see us as idiots. They'll just say it because they know they can get away with it, because it's the general consensus view that you can get away with basically bullying and browbeating flat earthers.
Well, there were some get-out cards that they use all the time, and you went over them. One is refraction. You want to comment on how they misuse refraction?
Well, it's a bait and switch trick. So they tell you about refraction and refraction being real. They might even give you a few examples with sugar water or various other effects with, I don't know, some gas being released and some plasticine behind it, or whatever they show you to show that light can deviate from its path, which is generally straight. And when they do, they'll then cause a commotion and swap out the suitcases. Close the suitcase as you start looking back at them, so you assume what you've just been handed in the suitcase is refraction, like you were shown with the light bending, right? No, what's actually in the suitcase when they do the bait and switch is terrestrial refraction, 7/6 of the radius value, derived from geometry that's been debunked, and derived from geometry that takes a flat plane to measure, and isn't air transitioning through different mediums a la Snell's law. It is, in fact, a mathematical derivation of an R value and an assumption that air takes the shape of a sphere, hence atmosphere. Well, that assumption bends the light at a rate of the radius, 7/6R in standard form, also known as atmospheric refraction. Well, atmosphere in and of itself is an oxymoron. Air doesn't take the shape of its sphere. So to assert that light will just generally deviate from its path at a rate of R because the air is sphere-shaped is an assumption that only takes place in maths, and that maths has been debunked and isn't actual refraction. You've been duped. You might have been shown a few examples of refraction, but terrestrial refraction it is not.
Okay, a close kin to that was the word atmosphere that he used. So tie that in when they use atmosphere to refraction.
One more time.
Another word you used as you were playing baller was the word, and you leaned heavily upon it, was atmosphere. So relate that to refraction, how, since it's got air shape in the sphere.
Well, it's the assumption that light is going to transition like it's going through multiple layers of glass. So if you imagine from your position on a sphere Earth surface falling away from you to create a geometric limitation called Earth curve at the horizon, well, as the light increases its density as it moves over that sphere surface, it's going to transition the light according to their description at their rate of R. So each time it goes through a slightly thicker layer of atmosphere, it would transition. And if you imagine each transition, each stage of the journey being like a piece of glass, it's going to constantly curve the light into your eye from the position in the distance at the horizon, i.e. Earth curve. Well, that light bending with respect to the horizon that's blocking things behind it or refracting them up with respect to it, that refraction requires air to be sphere-shaped to give you this justification. And the only reason the air would be sphere-shaped is if the ground's falling away from you, causing a geometric limitation to your view, aka Earth curve. Well, if you debunk both, you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't say, I've got the geometric limitation to give me R, to give me the rate that light bends around it. Well, if you've got the R from the limitation that's geometric, what is it, no atmo day? How did you get the R in the first place? Did you measure it from a flat plane with elevation angles to Polaris, or did you arrive at the Al-Biruni method by dip angle measurement to a geometric limitation with a straight line to it? Because that's how Al-Biruni's claimed to do it after he measured a flat plane to get the height of the mountain.
Very good. Another thing you went to was the word experiment, which denotes real science. Explain how they misuse that.
Any word in the vernacular with a claim of sphere Earth attached could have any number of words like hypothesis, theory, experiment, independent and dependent variables. All those things can be claimed just to lend credence to the idea that what I'm suggesting or assuming has got scientific validity to it, when in fact what you're doing is begging the question, in this case of a sphere Earth, or of sphere-shaped air with atmospherics, and then you claim that your demonstration that's not going to be the atmosphere that you're actually going to be using when it's R-based is going to be your experiment. So if I say my experimental validity to claiming that Earth has sphere-shaped air at a rate of R that I'm not going to tell you about when I switch out the suitcases, is going to be based on this experiment where I infuse some gas into the air to show that the light changes its path when it travels through it to your eyes. Therefore, quote-unquote experiment. When in reality, an experiment is a natural phenomena that you want to know the cause of, so you vary something you assume causes it to see if it causes it or not. That's an experiment. They just don't have any for a globe Earth.
So these are words that we've heard for most of our lives. And of course, everyone's familiar with atmosphere, science, and most people know what refraction is. And they misuse it for their ball Earth. So then you also use another one, which is an angle measurement, tangent plane. How does that work on a curved surface?
It doesn't.
Why do they put it there?
Because they need to get an elevation angle from something, so they claim that they're getting it to something, to a sphere. Because once you're claiming that the straight line that you're required to take an angle measurement is to the sphere, you've got a justification for a sphere that isn't the surface in that instance. Then at some point you can bait and switch the actual horizon that you're going to look at through your sextant with the one I just claimed was the geometric physical limitation called Earth curve. Again, the one I relinquished when I refracted it.
And last but not least, the assumption from the beginning to the end that Earth is a sphere to begin with. Begging the question. Go over begging the question for the audience.
Assuming your outcome, taking the premise that the position you're fighting for, in this case my claim that the Earth is a sphere, assumed in the first instance and the first premise I lay down in any example. So if I suggest that if Earth is a sphere, then I will observe antipodal star rotation as I travel to the hemisphere that's below me. And when I travel to the hemisphere I assume below me, called the southern hemisphere, then I do observe star rotation. Therefore, Earth's a sphere. Well, the begging the question aspect of that, actually a formal logical fallacy known as affirming the consequent, but the first statement, if Earth is a sphere, assumes the premise that when I travel south, I'm antipode. It's already assumed in my claim. So it doesn't matter what I say as the proof of my assumption, because my assumption's already been made and everyone will accept it if they accept this argument. In many instances, it doesn't even necessarily have the example that follows the begging the question fallacy be true. If Earth's a sphere, I'll observe 15 degrees an hour deviation because Earth rotates underneath as a separate reference frame to cause footballs to drift like Neil deGrasse Tyson examples. Meanwhile, if you actually check if that does actually happen, it doesn't. But they don't care because they've still assumed Earth's a sphere, and they'd rather you argued about whether or not we see 15 degrees an hour than argue about whether or not they've assumed the Earth's a sphere and it turns, in any of their examples, with or without deflection that they've claimed.
You may have been right. I may have missed this one. Any evidence of axial rotation, Earth-based variety, which is on the subject you're talking about?
If Earth was a sphere, we'd have a 15 degrees an hour drift, that's Coriolis deflection, as claimed by the globe Earth. We do not observe and cannot demonstrate any natural effect of 15 degrees an hour drift, or any other drift for that matter. Therefore, Earth is not rotating. We'd example it with drift if it was, like they claim it has, but it doesn't.
Well, thank you,
wouldn't
Nathan.
expect to see any deviation.
All right,
Discord.
anyone in Discord want to come and...
They're saying they have no sound, so maybe I've got to refresh and leave. That's probably
All right,
why they've been so quiet.
Yeah, I think so. Let's
It'll
see
be
what
back.
happens.
Yeah, these things happen, technical issues.
Well, that's why I wanted that sound check earlier, but never heard from anybody.
Can you hear me in Discord?
Oh, he's back. He's back.
My bad.
Oh.
Obviously, you couldn't tell me verbally, but someone told me from the chat. And because I've got my new monitor that's massive, thank you, Brian.
That's all right, mate. You haven't heard a thing about the show.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You start again.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
None whatsoever.
Any evidence of Earth curve?
Nope.
Any scientific evidence
Wait.
of gravity?
The
No,
first
get the gas
that you
pressure
didn't
out of
ask for
container. That's what
scientific
he's looking
evidence
for.
of Earth rotation.
I didn't ask for scientific evidence of Earth rotation because typically it's not asserted to be science. Occasionally people will fall into that trap with Earth rotation and claim that it's being proved with scientific validity. Foucault might be labelled science, but not necessarily. Gravity
So they can
always.
just
Gas mover rotation lockstep.
Hold on, Arwin, can you not hear him?
So they could just assert what you did with me the other day playing the Globe Warrior, correct?
Depends who you get.
Without declaring that it's science.
It depends who you get with that subject, but with gravity it's always science as far as they're concerned. They're never going to claim it outside of those realms. They need it to be science because it has no validity, so typically they'll just naturally try and lend credence to it by giving it some scientific words like experiment. I'm glad you're asking.
Like I said,
the reason I'm
they
glad
could
you're
just
asking.
assert what you did to me the other day.
Yeah, I led you though. I was intentionally dropping those words in so you would attack them and then hinting at how you should attack them as I did it. But I'm glad you've asked because Spurs is always going to be the quintessential example of this because he was the first to do it and the first to pick up on it. It's a double-edged sword, right? For a number of reasons. The first is that flat earthers will be out there claiming science and you have to chop their heads off just as much as you chop off the globers when they do it if you don't want to be called a hypocrite. That's the first part, the first problem. The second part is that you don't always have the sword to wield, because if your opponent hasn't claimed science and you start asking them what their independent variable is, that's a foul. You can't suddenly demand scientific validity if no one's actually claimed that they've got science in the first place. If they've not used any of the words that I'm listening out for, so to speak, then you can't call them on where's their independent variable. But if they turn up with the Cavendish quote-unquote experiment, then you can be damn sure you can be getting them asked about what is their independent variable, etc.
Right.
Oh, back to Spurs, because that's what Spurs did. So, this is a long time ago, and Spurs does not do this now, but, I'm sorry, Spurs. Every time I apologise, you're just my example for this. He saw how wonderful it was. He watched QE absolutely annihilate people by having them make a claim. I won't be specific about what their claim might have been. And he asks them, QE that is, for their independent variable. And then a full-on pummeling follows and everyone cheers. So Spurs goes, well, I can do that. So then someone comes in and says, well, the sun comes up over the horizon. And Spurs says, well, what's your independent variable? And the person goes, well, why would I need an independent variable? I haven't claimed this is science. Well, you've got to have one. You've got a cause and effect relationship, right? But nothing's been established. Nobody's made a claim of science. Yeah, it might be a cause and effect relationship, but if no one's claiming that it's been validated by science, how are you going to attack them on their lack of science? You can't. So you've got to be careful how you wield it.
Yeah, Spurs was wielding that sword, boy.
You won't get anybody better than Spurs at this argument now. That's why I pick him, because in many ways it works to his advantage. If someone comes along and thinks, oh, there's Spurs chemo, he doesn't understand science. Yeah, watch how quickly he rips you a new one if you take that assumption.
I agree. I think Brian's trying to get our gas pressure out of container. I think he still doesn't realize we're contained. Right, Brian?
Sorry, what did you say?
I didn't hear you. What was that? Got the phone. Just got to go. Someone at the door.
And I think you're waiting for gas pressure out of container because you still don't understand that we are contained.
Throwing some shade your way, Brian. Is he right? Postman. Got to go. Important delivery. Toast burning. Got to come. first. No? Brian? What's he talking about?
Well, he was talking some nonsense in the chat, so I wanted to give him the opportunity to explain.
Come on,
Yeah,
Brian,
I'm
we're all
lost.
friends here. Unless you're talking nonsense.
His tea's done. You got to go check the kettle.
Okay, it's going to be down to you, Neil. Fill us in. What's going on? Name and shame.
He obviously is not biting. I'm looking through his chat messages. I'll be back with it, though.
Okay, you let us know what the score is. So it's bank holiday over there, right? Today?
Unfortunately, yes. And I have barbecue.
Unfortunately, that means day off for everyone, doesn't it? Well, apart from people who work in retail.
Wait, what bank holiday is it?
Memorial Day for you guys. Memorial Day
Yes,
weekend,
Memorial
rather.
Day.
Is
It's
it
actually
Memorial
the
Day
kickoff
today?
of summer in the States.
Yeah, it's not it's not bank holiday. It's a Memorial Day. It's a holiday to remember the veterans who have died.
Another line from that same episode, Marooned in Red Dwarf. So he's putting out a distress call because they're marooned on an ice moon or something. And he's putting out the distress call on the radio and he goes, Mayday, Mayday. Why do they call it Mayday? Why that particular bank holiday? Why not Shrove Tuesday or Ascension Sunday? And then he does the Mayday call again, but he changes it, presses the radio. Ascension Sunday, Ascension Sunday. He says it's help me. Mayday, help me. Anyway, I used to love Red Dwarf. Space is so much cooler than Flat Earth, don't you think? No one taking the bait. Is this thing on?
It's on, but
I hear you.
we're trying to give Discord a chance to talk since they were shut out the first half of the show. Come on, Discord.
We had our own show while you were gone.
That's
yeah, our
nice.
own housekeeping.
You did your own housekeeping.
Oh, Brian, you're back.
I haven't been anywhere.
What was he chat
You
skanking
haven't
about?
answered the questions.
What were you chat skanking about? Come on, Brian.
You
Fill
haven't
us in.
asked me a question.
I know. How could it be begging a question, right?
What?
Just ask the
Listen,
question, Neil. Just
You were
start over.
making
Yeah, go ahead and ask
you
the
were
question again,
making
Neil.
claims about you were making claims about containment and how unsure you are that we're contained. Can you just break that down for us?
Never said anything about that. What are you going on about?
Calling you a liar, Neil.
Uh-oh.
He's a liar.
He actually did call you a liar, Neil.
Okay. So
He's a
okay,
lawyer.
Liar, Arwin, don't get involved.
Okay. So then I'm happy to understand that you do realize we're contained. Okay, that's fine.
There's 20 minutes to go.
You got any proof for that?
Proof of containment? Yeah, gas
See
pressure.
what I'm saying?
Yes, gas pressure.
Which gas pressure?
Yes, we're breathing it. That's right.
Have you got proof for that?
Of gas pressure? Yes.
Do show me the 14.7 psi we're supposed to be living in.
Here it is.
Show you 14.7 psi.
Yeah. What they call gauge pressure. How
That's
could you
arbitrary.
possibly
Is
measure
it?
that?
I'm just trying to figure out in my mind what the issue is. Is your issue with the scale?
No, I'm talking about the alleged background pressure we are supposedly living in.
Do you understand that we have gas? Do you agree with that much?
Gases, yes.
Do you appreciate that when gases move, they hit stuff, including each other. Do you understand that?
Yes.
So that would be it pressing on something then.
Right.
So that's gas pressure then.
And that would be at 14.7.
So that would be a yes. So that would be a yes, would it? Would that be a yes?
Yes, that would be a yes.
So we have gas
Is that
pressure. Okay.
14.7?
Okie dokie. So we've established, regardless of what scale we ascribe, gas we have. Gas moves around and presses on stuff. Ergo, we have gas pressure. Okay. Yeah. If it didn't have anything to press on, it would all dissipate.
Agreed.
So we must be contained.
The 14.7, they say.
No, not the scale. Don't care what scale you put on it.
We don't care about the scale, right?
No, I do not care. I just know I'm breathing gas, and gas moves around at high speed in all directions. And when it hits something, it's hitting it. That's it pressing on it. Now, if it didn't have anything to press on, it would just carry on. Yeah?
Oh, there's momentarily, like an airplane's wing changes the pressure below it and above it. Only momentarily.
Pressure, yeah. So we definitely have pressure then.
Heated up above the wing to reduce the density, and below the wing it's at a greater density. So you get lift.
Pressure, but yes.
Momentarily you can change gas pressure.
So we definitely have gas pressure then.
We have gas, and yes, it is at a pressure depending on what it's doing.
Right, therefore, antecedent-consequent relationship, we must have containment then. You can't have gas pressure without containment.
Momentarily, you can.
Okay. Do we momentarily breathe, or do we breathe all the time?
We breathe all the time. Well,
so we always have gas pressure. So there must be containment. Same thing, antecedent-consequent relationship.
Yes, and I've never denied that we have a density here, and the density gets less and less as we go higher. I've never denied that. What I do deny is what they're telling us. It is at 14.7 psi.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Their scale is arbitrary, though, so it doesn't really matter.
Oh, right.
I mean, what concerns you about their scale? If I qualified it in Pascal or bar, would that make it better?
We measure in pascals.
But would that make it any different? It's just a different scale, isn't it?
No, it wouldn't make it any different. But as you said, that is just a scale.
Yeah. So where's the beef? Or what's the beef?
15 minutes remaining. 15 minutes to go.
Hold on.
Not on my watch. 5 minutes to go here. So what's the
beef is? Hold on. The beef is I hear him on Gem Pandas saying I don't know we have containment. That's my issue, and that's it.
Okay. Well, he asked what your proof of containment was, and I said gas pressure. And now we're into the wrangle-dangle of the scale of gas pressure when we have got a concession that gas has pressure. So, back to the antecedent-consequent relationship.
My only argument is, we all know and accept that high pressure always goes to low pressure. Is that correct?
Yes, called entropy.
Right. If our blood pressure is at 1.2 psi, about 120 millibars, how does that bleed out into 14.7 psi?
Being pumped.
It's being pumped at over 14.7 psi. Valves in your heart could not produce the pressure needed to expel your blood at over 14.7 psi.
Okay.
That's without looking at tear ducts.
And blood is like gas, right?
Blood is not like gas.
Oh, okay.
So a false equivalence.
But pressure is like pressure.
So gas pressure is like liquid pressure then, is it?
When we turbo or supercharge a car, we have to up the fuel injection pressure to whatever pressure we are putting into the plenum chamber.
Okay.
To keep the fuel flow the same as what it was when it was naturally aspirated.
Now this
So if
is
we
how you do a
boost
false
it-
equivalence. Carry on.
If we boost it to half a bar, about 7 psi, we have to increase the pump pressure for the fuel by the same amount.
So what are we talking about? We're talking about the turbine blowing air on the engine or the liquid squirted in by the injectors? Because they're very different things.
You're talking about pressure equalization. If we don't up the pressure on the injectors, the engine will not reach the fueling ratio it needs because of the greater pressure of the air that's going in.
Okay.
So, taking that into account, how does our blood pump out into 14.7 psi if it is only at 1.2 psi?
But blood isn't the same
That's
as
all
gas
I
is.
want. I just want
I've
the
just
answer
covered
for
this.
that.
I mean, it's nice that you've got a false
have a-
equivalence with both of the examples that you're using in false equivalence. In the example, i.e. turbocharged gas, that would be the air being blown in, and the liquid fuel that will be, turning into gas at some point so it can be combustible. But either way, this is still a false equivalence because blood and gas aren't going to behave the same way. They're different states.
Pressure difference is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's
I got a
differences
few
between a
questions
liquid.
for you, Brian.
Yeah, they're very different things though. How gas behaves and how liquid behaves.
Yeah, you're assuming
Exactly.
that gas pressure is going to behave the same way as liquid pressure. And that's what presents the false equivalence, Brian.
Explain, because as far as I understand it, pressure is pressure, whether it be a gas pressure or a liquid pressure.
All right, they're different
Incorrect.
things. They behave in different ways. So, for instance, if you've got a hydraulic system that you push the brakes with, that's the pressure that you put physically on the liquid, correct? What happens if gas gets in there? Does it still function the same or does it mess everything up? Because they're different.
No, you can't compress air like you can.
Sorry, just
compress-
answer my question. If you have a hydraulic braking system and you introduce a gas to it, does it still function with the same type of pressure or does it stop working?
You've got 10 minutes left.
No.
10 minutes to go.
Why have you keep
No,
getting
it
a
doesn't.
10-minute call? What's your timer for?
I don't know what that's for.
What's the
I'm
timer for?
racing. I'm
Pardon?
on race room.
On
Let
what?
me quit out.
On what?
I've got a game running.
Oh, my bad. You can tell I'm not a
Oh
gamer.
my God, we're arguing with a gamer. That's the problem.
He's
Stop
not a
playing
YouTube
games,
gamer.
Brian.
No. While I might have knocked YouTube/Twitch gamers of our generation, no, it's being a gamer in general. Just, if you happen to want to bosh out a game of Call of Duty or whatever the kids play these days, more power to you at every age. Games aren't for anyone at any age. But the type of behaviour that kids exhibit when a 40-year-old or 50-year-old does it on a YouTube channel, that's very different. Just want to qualify that.
As I understand pressure,
You don't.
You
You
didn't
need to overcome
qualify
the pressure
my
of
answer.
that.
You didn't answer what I just put to you though. We're just moving on, it seems.
sorry, what did
Which
you
is a
say?
fine example.
Hydraulic system.
Hydraulic system with air in it would not function.
But they're the same, right? Pressure's pressure, isn't it?
No.
So
Pressure is-
why are you arguing? Sorry, stop. Sorry, that's your
Yeah.
argument.
Pressure is pressure. 25 psi.
Unless it's gas versus hydro. Unless it's not. Like this false equivalence isn't, Brian. So you've just conceded they're not the same. No, different. You've just conceded that.
Don't forget, I told you your show weren't on. Please.
Sorry, you've just conceded when comparing and contrasting in one system these two different states, liquid and gas, and how they behave differently. And one introduced to the other won't just continue to work as pressure. You've already said no, different. But you now want to go off on one telling us how they're the same again because it's pressure. Off to a good week, says Retro Bill. Thanks for the super chat.
Well, isn't liquid bonded solidly and gas isn't?
Is liquid bonded solidly? Sorry, are you having a laugh?
I didn't say that.
I think he's being absurd
No, that was
intentionally.
me. I was asking a question.
Are you being absurd intentionally? Be honest.
Yes, he was.
I hope he was, because I'm about to round out. If he
No.
wasn't,
I was asking a
Okay,
question.
so let's look at gases then.
No.
Well
So
done.
let's equalise it by using gases. We live allegedly in 14.7 psi. What do you think you pass wind at?
I don't know.
It's been
Brian, are you
measured about
serious?
1.2
Yeah.
to 1.5 psi.
Brian, I think your problem is you're not liking the
Equalize
scale, but
your
you didn't
gases.
answer Nathan's question.
Now
You did.
equalise your gases. How can you fart at 1.2 psi into 14.7 psi?
How do you know that it's 1.2? First of all,
People have measured it.
who's measured it?
You haven't measured mine, baby.
I'm being serious. Forget about the
You
crude
haven't
nature of
got
the
it
example.
at hand. It has been done.
Okay,
People have
fine. Okay, fine.
inserted
Okay.
a pressure gauge and measured it.
Okay. I take it as read that what you say is true. I'll say that you've taken it. Somebody's got a describable measurement at 1.2, just for the example, if nothing else. Okay. When you go to fill up your tyres, the scale starts at 0. Is this scale like that scale?
This scale, the gauge was zeroed in atmospheric
So
conditions.
if it's zeroed at atmospheric pressure, then obviously a fart is above that then, isn't it? If you're measuring it at 1.2 above a zeroed scale at atmospheric pressure. Man, you obviously know the answer to this. It seems absurd that you'd even be asking if you know that.
Right. Now tell me,
Sorry, you didn't acknowledge what I combated your argument with. You've just conceded the scale gets zeroed.
that is suggesting that the passing of wind is greater than 14.7 psi.
Well, is it? You didn't answer.
That's what
When
you're
we said, how did you
suggesting.
get the measurement? What's the scale? Has it been zeroed when you give it a 1.2 measurement? Can you reference it and cite it so we can see how that scale was derived?
I don't believe our bodies can
Have
take
you looked at how that scale was
internally-
derived or not? You'd have to decide, just say yes or no. If you don't know, that's fine.
The pressure gauge was zeroed in atmospheric pressure.
So it's higher than atmospheric pressure then.
Yes.
So how does it overcome atmospheric pressure when it's higher than it? Are you joking?
No.
Yes. If it's at 1.2 and zeroed on a scale to atmospheric pressure, you're producing a gas pressure that's higher than that by 1.2.
Do you understand what you
Do I understand that you're about to start barking at me for the third time without acknowledging a smegging word that I've overcome your argument with? Yeah, I know that you're going to start barking straight through me. Yeah, Brian, yeah, definitely.
You are suggesting
I'm not suggesting. You've told me the scale has been zeroed. Therefore, 1.2 is above atmospheric pressure. Therefore, that is how it overcomes atmospheric pressure. Ergo, your question is stupid.
You are suggesting our lower bowels can contain.
No, you are suggesting it when you give us the scales that are zeroed at atmospheric pressure and give us a 1.2 value above that. That's what you're telling me. I'm not suggesting dick. You've given me the example. You've also explained how it overcomes atmospheric pressure because it's higher than it by 1.2 psi.
Yes, but it is.
Yes. So can you sit down and shut up now, Brian?
I think they lied to us about everything.
So, nobody's lied to us about anything in terms of this example, Brian. Your example was stupid. Hello? So, meanwhile, we have gas pressure. Sometimes higher than atmospheric pressure in the case of a fart by 1.2, so I've just found out. Fascinating. That scale was taken when zeroing that scale against atmospheric pressure, not that air takes the shape of a sphere. Meanwhile, to have gas pressing at all, it must be contained to have something to press on. So we definitely have containment. It's still an antecedent-consequent relationship, regardless of this nonsense about farts, Brian.
Bowels are a container.
And what I was trying to say a while ago was, gases, you know, whenever the gases hit each other, they bounce off. And whenever liquids are put together, you know, hit each other, they just bond.
Maybe. Yeah, essentially you've got weak bonds in liquids, strong bonds in solids, no bonds in gases.
Right.
Any more for any more? We've extended the show. Shout out to Godzilla for the super chat. Thank you for the show, Nathan. Thank you for the super chat, Godzilla. Any more for any more? If not, I'm going to round out, or ask people to stay tuned, I should say. Nope. With that, I'm going to say a first huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ Pals for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. As I say, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the thanks button, hit the PayPal link, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!